All right. All right, Emily, let's start.
Sounds good. So I will introduce myself since you all introduce yourselves. My name is Emily Ennis, and I am the principal of Ennis Associates, which is an urban design and planning firm. And today I am working with you all, kicking off a project with you all to look at creating a sign and facade improvement program for Ashburnham basically for the town center. And this is part of the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative Program, which is run by DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development. And so I'm an on-call consultant with them. And when towns apply for funds for different projects, I'm one of the consultants that gets assigned to a town. And I am lucky enough this time to be assigned to all of you. A few years ago in 2021, the state did what they called the Rapid Recovery Program, which was a program that was intended to help communities and businesses recover from the effects of the pandemic. And we had a bunch of different consultants doing a bunch of different things, but one set of consultants wrote what they called toolkits. And these were documents that were designed to provide information about doing various things that would be helpful for small businesses and for communities. I wrote the Sign and Facade Program Toolkit. So it's one of the areas of expertise that I have. And what I thought I'd do today is run you through some of what a sign and facade program is, some examples from other communities, not just in Massachusetts, but around the country, and then talk a little bit about the work that we're going to be doing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you can all see that cover. So the other thing that I want to make sure that we talk about today is on April 13th, we're going to do not quite a full day long process. I would like to meet with some of the business owners and property owners and talk with them about what this type of program is and what can it do and get their feedback. And then we were going to have a public presentation in the evening. So there's two things I'd like to understand from you today about that. One is, who should I be talking to? And the other, and maybe a little bit of help in reaching out. And the other is, as we go through this, what types of questions do you think the community will have that we would want to answer? So we are here, obviously, in the bright green on March 14th. I have regular check-ins with Rosemary and Brian and Rebecca of where the process is and where it's going. So the first thing on the sort of collective agenda for doing this is actually coming up with a draft program that we can present in April and discuss. And that's one of the reasons for talking through the options today, is to see what you all think might be useful or helpful for your community. And then having the public meeting, having the meetings with owners, talking about the options for a sign and facade program, getting that public input, and then putting it all together into a draft document that can be reviewed by yourselves, by the select board, and then finally move forward to something that could be approved by the community. So we've got various checkpoints. The ending date for this project, as is for all MDI projects, is June 30th. And I'm not expecting any problems with getting it done before June 30th. So it's great that we're meeting since you are the EDC, because the Sign and Facade Program Improvement Program is essentially an economic development tool. It can be within a specific area of a community for an entire community. We'll talk about some of the options that it can apply to, but essentially what you're doing is improving the access to businesses, the visibility of businesses. There's a couple of different ways to do that, but in doing so, you are attracting, or the goal is to attract more people to come to those businesses and support them. And also increase sort of the overall attractiveness of a community as a whole. And so this helps obviously drive business to the small businesses, drive businesses to the communities, and is really part of a downtown identity, or can be part of a downtown identity. And you'll see I've got a couple of examples of communities that have taken that and used this program to really publicize the results and drive kind of an understanding that things are happening in the area, and things are changing. So what usually happens for this type of program is that the municipality is providing funds to businesses or property owners, usually after the work has been done and based on certain criteria. And we'll go through those frequently, and in talking with people who have actually run the programs before, as opposed to just help design them, you usually require a match of some sort of the business. That's to give them, or the property owner, give them kind of some skin in the game and an interest in the results. There's usually an approval process, application process and approval process. Sometimes towns will do a pilot program where they choose maybe 2 or 3 businesses to kick off with, and then open it up to more businesses. But the idea is, especially done in towns or cities where the initial interest isn't particularly high, that there's a demonstrated need, but people are a little sort of nervous about participating in the program. So 1 or 2 businesses can kind of spearhead that. And then usually or almost always what happens is that the work is done, it's signed off on by, say, the building inspector or the person who's managing the program, depending on the type of work it was done. And then funds are dispersed once they're received. So you've got this accountability. You don't just give the money out and kind of cross your fingers that somebody's actually going to do the work. So with that, a couple of precedents in the area. Different sized communities, but I picked these because they have some interesting components. And actually, if you look at the toolkit, you'll see some of these mentioned again. Ashland is a particularly interesting one. It's a town. They have a 50% matching grant. They kicked theirs off by doing an initial appropriation at town meeting. And then in the second year, the program was so successful that they actually set up a revolving fund that they put the funds in on an annual basis. And then because it's a matching grant with a fund coming in, that allows them to just expand out. And I believe theirs is open to the entire town. They also partnered with a local bank to do a 2-year no interest loan. And that combination of a municipality giving some funding and then a local bank helping with the grant, or the match rather, from the business with either a no interest or a low interest loan, can be a really powerful combination. Brookline, you'll see they had a 0 interest loan, which is paid back in 4, I forgot to put annual installments there, but that's nice because it keeps the money circulating within the program. So as those monies are coming back, they can be dispersed to somebody else. They do track their results publicly. And jumping over to Cambridge, they actually have an online map of all of the businesses that have been supported by their storefront improvement program. They also, the link is there, and I'll provide this after our meeting so you can look at all the resources. But Cambridge does something else which is interesting, which is they leverage their storefront improvement program with available state energy grants, and also for energy efficiencies, and also I believe for ADA access. So many communities use these programs to help with ADA access. Frequently older stores might have to step up to get into the store, and so that's something that is an issue. Brockton has a match, and it's an interest-free deferred loan. I believe it is paid back when the building is sold. So it's out there. And frequently there is also a requirement that business owners maintain, or property owners maintain, the improvements for a certain number of years to be eligible for the grants. And then Lowell actually breaks theirs down. So some people have a sign and facade improvement program. It's one big bucket. Lowell actually has smaller grants and they're different buckets. So you can get a facade improvement program, you can get a sign improvement program. I think there might be a couple of others in there. And a business owner can apply for all of them, but they're just coming out of different buckets. So actually, before we go into the board before and after, any questions so far on the overall sort of outline of what a sign and facade improvement program does? Okay, so I am going to show you just some examples. I picked these from, unfortunately, not everybody with the sign and improvement program will show the before. Frequently they show the after, which is great, but not particularly useful for our discussion. So I had to go further afield. So you can see this is the ones on the left are the before, and the ones on the right, of course, are the after. So this is a neighborhood in Chicago. What you can see frequently is this idea that, it can be just a paint and a sign upgrade, which is what this is. This one looks like maybe it had a few extra repairs. It had some window signage going on. Sometimes you see that they've addressed code violations as part of this, and that's a discussion to have here. This one got an awning as well as some much better signage and actually window improvements as well, which is quite nice. Looks like they may have added a window. This one, so sometimes you limit it just to the storefront. In this case, they clearly did the entire facade for two of these buildings. And thinking about geographically where you do these, sometimes it can be quite useful to at least kick off with a concentrated area and move out from there. So, I mean, you can see the visual impact of addressing two buildings on this block. Actually three, come to think of it, with that sign ban there, rather than just doing one at a time. So that can be really interesting. And then these pictures aren't particularly good because when I first met up with Rosemary and Brian, it was a very, very cold day and the sun was exactly at the wrong angle to get any pictures. So it was on my list to actually come and be in Ashburnham this week. I've got clients in Greenfield and East Hampton as well, but I have the feeling if you've got 20 inches of snow, that's not going to do very much good for pictures. So I will wait till it melts, but then I'll be back and get much better pictures. But what I'm looking for in this is just existing conditions of, I'm not calling anything out as being good or bad, but some of the things that Rosemary and Brian and Rebecca and I all talked about was, buildings that have multiple front doors, the lack of signage, the lack of directionality. You can see there's some that might be, some temporary signage going on. Some communities have, I can see some outdoor eating here, and we had pictures of that, or I had pictures of that at another location. Some communities will use it not just for the building itself. I mean, the sign obviously can be away from the building. It could be as part of the landscape, but some will use maybe to restripe parking to allow for outdoor dining. That was a popular option during the pandemic. Obviously, I mentioned addressing accessibility as well, thinking about the front yard setback. So thinking about what happens between the building and the street. So it can be used for some landscape improvements for owners that want that. So there's a couple of different ways that we can think about structuring it. So when you look at the program options, you want to start thinking about who's eligible for the program. Usually the property owner or the business owner. If it's the business that's getting it, the property owner has to sign off because it's their property. But also restrictions, have they paid their taxes? What type of use it is. Lowell's quite interesting because they actually, for certain uses that they don't want to promote within their community, they don't allow those uses to apply. So smoke shops, gun shops, etc. They're like, this is not what we want our community to be about. So they're excluded. Activities, so I mentioned this. So is it the storefront? Is it the full facade? Is it just signage? Is it just awnings? Do you want to expand it to address? One of the things we talked about was maybe requiring that if it does something on the facade, that they have to address exterior code violations at the same time. And as a condition of getting the funding. So that's an option. Accessibility or energy efficiency. And then how much money do they get? And is it a grant, loan? How does that structure work? And the conditions of approval and the application, some of this is fairly boilerplate. So, if you look at one sign of facade improvement, probably every planner or in every town in Massachusetts is going through saying, oh, that looks good. I'll grab that. But there is an overall structure. So we pull those. So what do they need to submit as part of their application? How is the application done? Is it a rolling application? Is it only at certain types of the year? Who's approving it? Is it a staff member? Is it a committee? How quickly do you let people know? And then setting up those conditions of reimbursement. So the work has to be done. It has to be signed off on. You have to have all the receipts. Whether or not an applicant can be rejected, and then whether or not if the applicant does not comply, what's the procedure for non-compliance with those funds. So I'm going to stop here. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Emily, a question. On the how much money will they receive? Well, you have grants and loans. If this is a revolving fund, a revolving account, those two seem to be mutually exclusive.
Yes, exactly.
How does that work?
So it really depends on how you want to do it. The way some communities do it is they have a one-time, and they're like, this is just going to be a one-off project. We're going to do it in 2023. We're not going to do it again. We're just going to disperse the funds. Others want to set up that ability to have some money, maybe it's a loan and the money comes back in, and as it comes back in, it goes back out again. And then others, as I said, the town of Ashland actually makes an annual appropriation to it. So setting up the revolving fund. So I think that again goes to your goals as a community. How many businesses do you want to be able to help, and over how long a period?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to stop here for a little bit and just get a sense from you all of what you think about these options. What components do you think would be important for your community? Do you see it's the entire facade plus signage? Do you plus site? Do you see that maybe you want to focus it a little bit more? Do you get a sense of whether or not you want to sort of start in the center and move out, or make it eligible to everyone in town or every business in town?
Emily, just a comment. I mean, you took those photographs before. Some of that, like for example, in front of the pizza parlor, I mean, that's parking right now. And I mean,
Yes.
It would be nice for outdoor dining, but one of the issues with economic development struggles with is the parking issue, how we accommodate all of that.
Well, that's going to be addressed, Christina, in the STRAP grant that's going on right now. So all of that will be rethought, right?
Mhm.
I don't know what it looks like, no idea. But what might happen is we're going to put a sidewalk probably somewhere near there, or maybe even create on-street parking.
Mhm.
If we widen the road a little bit. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But they might use the funds in order to fix up what they're now left with, right?
Right.
So
And I would also say signage is important, because I think,
signage.
for this town, it's lacking for sure.
Yes.
Correct. And I think there's some buildings that have to look at the full facade.
Mhm.
I mean, the
Mhm.
gray
Right.
Zinna building needs some love.
Right.
And it's
But if it was
probably
somewhat coordinated with signage, it probably would look a little bit better.
correct.
Yeah.
Emily, do you want to go back to the pictures of Ashburnham, and
I was
might
just thinking
spark
that,
some
yeah.
conversation?
You can point to things. I have more, but the light was just once.
So
you put it on
the
screen,
Zinner-
it's sort of this.
The Zinna building is the one that's in the upper left-hand corner.
Yep.
And one of the things that's interesting about that, yes, there's no signage. There used to be, I'll be honest, there was signage that was perpendicular to the building, but it hung out on the top.
Mm,
But
interesting.
what you don't see, and there's lighting, there's the ability to light the signs, but the landlord didn't want to do it anymore. And because requires him to rewire it, or he has to include it in the rent. But one of the complaints we get is that there's no definition between each store.
Right.
So it
Yes.
looks like one big, is it one
Mhm.
store? Is it 3 stores? Is it 4 stores?
Is it an
So,
apartment complex?
right, exactly.
Right. So then something that, and something that allowed for the painting the facade, you could, paint each separately. You can each have a projecting sign coming out of there. It doesn't have to be illuminated, but it could be projecting. There's a little bit of a different component. So, that starts to definitely signage as a component, definitely facade treatments as a component. Christina, to your earlier comment about the parking, this isn't something, well, I mean, you are doing the strap grant, but normally it's not something where the town says, hey, you're using that front yard setback for parking. You've got to stop that right now.
Mhm.
This is the business are coming to the town and applying for it.
Right.
Now there could be something where, say, you were changing your sign code and asking people to come into compliance over a 5-year period and offering this grant at the same time to help them do that, right? So you could pair it. So for example, you could say, hey, we are taking away part of what you've been treating as parking, but we have this grant to help you deal with what happens when that construction comes through. This idea of pairing it with other actions to kind of sweeten that it's a useful tool to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I love that idea because there will be some pushback, hey, I don't know what ultimately will happen we were talking about the pizza place in the lower
Mhm.
left-hand corner,
Mhm.
but that's an intersection right there.
Right.
And I don't know what the rules are regarding backing out into an intersection. How many feet back can you be? We are supposed to be squeezing a sidewalk in there. Well, how does that work with parking? I don't know. I don't know what's
I'm
going to
saying it doesn't.
That's
I
going to
don't-
be
Honestly, that's gonna be a trick.
that is a trick. Yeah. And I don't want to be the one talking to him. That's why I'm working on this and somebody else is doing the other thing.
I would just submit for the list that was on the other page,
Mhm.
I think, if we put together a program, I think they all speak to attracting people to the center of town, whether it's visitors or residents, addressing issues with people getting into a business, being able to access the business. Except for the energy efficiency, that's probably the only one I would kind of push back on as being part of this program.
Mhm.
To me, it doesn't seem to be conducive to everything else we're trying to do.
Well, we have another grant program that I think is going to be coming online for energy efficiency. So they might be able to apply for that.
Mhm.
So we're talking about that on Monday night.
And as I said, I think there are
Did we
state
switch
grants
back
as
to the
well. Yep.
the Zinna building? Yeah, the one in the lower,
Upper left.
upper left.
Mhm.
That, to me, it's a mishmash. I would like to see consistency throughout, if that makes any sense to anybody.
Mhm.
That's what that needs. And look you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 building owners in the downtown. You got Richie, you got the guy that owns Sammy that owns the pizza joint, the hospital that owns the hospital building. Zinna building is one owner. Then the pizza joint, Richie's store, and
The dentist.
The
and the
dentist.
dentist. Yeah, sorry. And the
Yeah.
dentist.
And the convenience store.
Well, that's
Now,
owned by
Richie owns
Sam.
that.
Oh.
Sammy owns
Sam
that.
owns that.
Yeah.
And GFA and Athol, they've already
Yeah.
done whatever they're going to do.
Creative Connections.
Yeah,
Creative
but they're a little bit
Connection.
separated from the rest
Yeah.
of the downtown in terms of space and what
Mhm.
they got
It would be
going on.
Dave's.
And Dave,
would
yeah,
be the next one.
yeah.
So
So,
it really would be. And then if people were interested, we only have a couple of, well, two businesses on Central Street.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
do you think those 7 to 8 owners, would some of them be willing to talk to me?
Oh, I think so,
Okay,
yes,
great, excellent.
definitely.
I'd love to hear what, what they're thinking of doing for their buildings rather. And then if this type of program is of interest to them, so.
Yeah, no, we can make that happen. I mean, there'll be a few people that might be, with the Zinner block, I
Mhm.
don't know, the property owner, we can arrange that, but then it's all the individual stores that are in there that lease space. The
Mhm.
Tavern on Central is the large building that's on the upper right
Yes.
that has no sign and
Mhm.
no one knows what it is. There's no sign on Central Street.
Mhm.
What's the zoning? Can you do a perpendicular sign? Can you do it backlit? How big can it be? What's the what are the parameters? I mean,
You
What-
can do
what-
you can do a projecting sign. I don't know about the lit.
You
yeah,
can't do a lit sign.
I don't
The,
think you can, but maybe, doesn't Ethel Savings have a backlit sign?
Yeah, they're grandfathered. I think the only
Okay.
lights we can do, Ron might know. The only signs we can do that are lit is if they individually have a light shining on them. They can't be neon or, although
Right.
you saw neon.
the
Or they-
easiest sign to put
You
up.
could do it,
in
you
our-
could do
in
an
the current
uplit
building
sign.
code.
That's what you're saying, to light a perpendicular sign on Main Street, do an uplight.
Yeah, so you can have a metal or wooden lettering or sign, and then you can have a light shining on that metal or wood sign.
Which you can do on the Zinner block. I mean, I spoke to that, not this not
Yep.
this guy, the McGuan, when he was there. The reason why he got rid of all of it was because of the way it's wired in his building.
Mm.
And they were falling off, some of them.
Well, he didn't want to pay for the power.
Yeah.
So he just said, no, I'm not putting signs there anymore that are lit.
Mm.
But anyway, that,
It's cramped, and it's cramped. It's very cramped. Parking is a huge issue.
right. The other problem with the Zinner block is, again, we'll be putting a sidewalk in front of that. Is that the time to make those accessible? Because each one of those
Yes.
has at least a step up.
That's why you'd like to get it all one look along the sidewalk, so everybody's got their ADA requirement taken care of at that point. Make it all, and then, the back of the building, the asphalt pit from hell back there. It's a lot of wasted, that's where the parking is, but it's all wasted space, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, you could
Yeah.
definitely restripe that to get more cars in there.
I just think use and accessibility.
Yes.
But again, how much is it gonna cost me and why do I want to do it?
Yeah, the other thing with the Zinner block is, because it has a front and a back and there's entrances to the buildings from the back, there's no signage on the back. So that makes it look all the more like an apartment building.
And it goes back to those buildings we were talking about earlier that has those, front and back, no signage.
Right.
And there's always the jungle that grows in between the hospital building and underneath all the decks. Not to be a stinker about it, but all of those things take away from the commercials, the space, number one, and just what I think you're trying to do with downtown Ashburnham. I mean, I don't want to be negative about it, but these are the things you're going to be facing.
Yeah.
Is that something that this program should address, or are there other mechanisms for having them landscape?
If this is an opportunity to take care of something like that,
Mhm.
this is the program.
Okay,
It
great.
is. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it was recommended.
Mhm.
How do you incentivize people to make these types of improvements?
Right. So one thing, in hearing you all talk about these, there's something that I didn't put on that other slide, which we should have a chat about and think about. It's whether the grant pays for design and installation of the improvements, or just installation. So some communities will just do installation and the building or property owner have to come with their own design. Others will give some money towards the design and some money towards the installation. So that's something else to think about.
So just a quick question on that. When you and I were walking around,
Mhm.
some of the comments involved that the sign designs were too small. The signs were too small.
Yes.
The
Mhm.
lettering was too small.
Yes.
Where they were actually installed was not the best place.
Mhm.
So if we were to include design, would we have a say in that? Or could we still have a say in that if we only did installation?
Both. And one thing to consider, I had sent you the Winthrop example. They did not do guidelines within their program of what they wanted to see, but you could do that. So you could say, you could have information about placement. You could have resources. So for example, there are resources out there about good sign design, and you can make that part of the information that you give to the business owners or the property owners, that we want you to look at these before you bring in. We're not going to pay for just any sign. It has to be a sign that's legible. It has to be a sign that, meets our sign code standards, but you can also establish, because you're paying for part of this, you can also establish additional criteria if that's of interest.
Yeah.
So
I think that local businesses need that guidance, honestly.
I
They
because
think,
definitely do.
I think the design component is what we've got to start with.
Yeah,
This is an opportunity to get it to be uniform, to conform to certain standards. And if you look at the Zinnia building now, it's a hodgepodge, and my vote is get rid of that look and get it colonial, whatever the term is, colonial or period type of awning in similar doorways. And that would be my vote for design to start. And then I don't know how then you've got to come up with how is the funding going to work, and whether people would be interested in that anyways, but.
So
I see.
is that one way you're thinking about unifying it, is choosing
Yeah.
the
No, that's
colonial
not
and the awning?
necessarily. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're just brainstorming, Rebecca. But the reason why I'm into the whole design thing is that when you can create a beautiful design on your laptop, but then when it's translated into an actual sign, it's illegible.
right.
And I'll give you a perfect example: spice and grain.
yeah.
When you get up close to that, it looks cute. It's nice. It's beautifully done, but you cannot read that thing. It's in cursive handwriting. The font size is too small. The typeface isn't the right one. But you wouldn't know that when you saw it on your laptop. It looks perfectly good. Even Celebrate Ashburnham, when you actually, the logo's fine, but it was the color choice that made it, when you printed it like on the banner, it was not bright enough. You know what I'm saying, Steve? It was
Yeah, absolutely.
too pastel-y.
I agree.
That's why in the design phase, you need a professional, I don't know, what's the term, designer, sign guy to do it. You can't leave it up to the individual, or, you have to have this done right. And you have to lead them and say, this is how, these are the parameters. This is what we want this is what we want your store to look like. And we're going to help you through the process, and, positives and
I think the sales
reinforcement.
pitch, though, to them is to increase their business, I mean,
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
it's to promote uniformity to a certain extent, but obviously they're gonna not want to know what's in it for me. We're gonna say, because you'll be more visible, because people are gonna know you're there, right? I mean, to a certain extent.
Correct. And some of the stuff that we can recommend to them isn't even something that would cost them any money. Well, it would, but I sent Emily the pictures of Ashburnham at night. And, when you're looking at these buildings and there's not a light on in those windows and it's totally black, and you're driving
Mhm.
through at 6 o'clock at night, either on your way home or up to New Hampshire or Vermont on the weekend, you don't
Yeah.
even know what that business is.
Right.
So
Um,
that's something we can definitely include in this, if you think of this as a package that, we're going to develop the program, which is actually the easiest, in some ways, it's the easiest part, right? We just need to know which components to add. But after that, but then there's this package that goes to them that says, hey, we want you to be part of this program. Here's all the things you need to do. And then here are the types of designs we'd like to see. And so, whether it's, some communities will say we'd like the building to have conformity across it, right? If you're going to have an awning for each business, those awnings all have to be the same style of awning. You can't have 5 different
Right.
awnings for 5 different businesses, but you're not necessarily requiring that the building on either side have the exact same awnings, right? So there's a level that you do, you do to the level of, say, a Nantucket with a very, very strict historical code, or you're just saying we'd like each building to have its own identity, but that identity has to be consistent for that particular building. So there's some grades there. Certainly on sign design, there are resources out there where we can say, hey, you should talk to a sign designer, but here are the things that you should be talking about with them, because 99% of business owners don't know anything about sign design. They probably don't know the right questions to ask. So, so we can give them the resources to do that. We can say, if you want a projecting sign to be visible to a pedestrian, it has to have a font size of this. So give them those hints all the way through.
yes.
And then again, have you all decide, and collectively through this process, is some of that money going to help them hire that design consultant? In other words, if we, the town, are giving you money for design, it's because we're expecting you to hire a professional to help you with that design. It's not just sort of an add-on that you can do what you want with.
Correct. Yeah, no, I that's a great suggestion, Emily.
Okay, great. All right, I'm just going to make a note. It's almost like a how-to guide.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to be able to just like I said, create something on your laptop. And then they just ship it off to a print shop or a sign shop and say, hey, do this.
Mhm.
But, to your point, when we're talking about consistency within a building, even with signs, you're going to have a hot pink sign next to a bright lavender sign. It's starting to get crazy after a while.
Well, it also becomes that, I've certainly seen brightly colored facades, but they have to be well thought through, right? And
Correct.
they have to be appropriate to the community. And sometimes, to use the pink, a hot pink facade is going to make a business stand out if it makes sense for that business. You don't want random, bright colors. So
Yeah, like I think I
something else to
mentioned to
think
you
about.
on the Zinna block,
Yeah.
our RP consultant just did a quick sort of thing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And his suggestion was to paint in each individual storefront a different color, but they were all complementary.
Yes, exactly.
So you prescribed the colors. You said, okay, these are the colors. No two can be the same. The
Mhm.
top's going to stay white. It's really just the bottom that we're painting. We're changing the door colors and you're adding a sign.
Yes. And that would probably be enough to just perk that whole building right
Yeah.
up. So,
Emily, the one thing that is sort of our only kind of commercial looking building. I mean, the majority of the structures downtown, Ashburnham's unique in that we've maintained a lot of those historic structures, but we don't have the late 19th century industrial commercial
mhm.
storefronts. It's individual buildings. It's kind of a unique center, I think, in that sense, except for the Zinna block is more looking more commercial.
Well, Yeah, and I'm looking at this building here. So you've got quite a residential feel to this building, other than the
Correct,
scale.
yeah.
It's a little large for a residential, but it's pretty good. The shutters are actually pretty good. I have I inherited from my father an anathema to shutters that are too small for their windows.
All right. It couldn't possibly close.
Exactly. So these aren't too bad, but then you've got this really interesting sort of storefront added in, and you've got the signage isn't quite working. And so there are things that could be done to this building to
Mhm.
just make this feel a little bit more consistent.
Right.
And
So,
on the side, Emily, you
yeah.
can't see from this picture, a lot of those windows are boarded up.
Yeah, I think these first two I can see, but not back in there. And then, yeah, as you turn the corner as well. So
Yeah, and those could be, you could do something with that.
I saw, this was actually in Scotland, in Edinburgh. There was a building site, and there was a vacant building, an old vacant building, probably late 1800s, maybe stone, and all of the windows had been taken out, probably to prevent damage from the building site next door, but they were replaced with plywood that was painted with scenes and murals and stuff. And you knew it was temporary, so that you weren't going to have to live with it forever, but it added a bit of color to what was otherwise kind of a scary looking site, as you know, many building sites are attractive nuisances. But it was something that you could do with that. You
There's
could
actually
paint
one in
some-
Alston where they have
Mm.
people.
Yes, actually, I think I've seen that one. And it's a nice idea. So,
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
there's some options with that. Let me just jump ahead a little bit so we can talk about the public input portion of this, because I think some of the questions we're asking I'd kind of like your ideas on what we should present and how we should talk about it. So as I said, I'd love to meet with some of the property owners and the business owners during the day. Obviously business owners are super busy. So my idea would be, if they're willing, I'd just drop by at a time that's convenient to them and chat. Same thing with the property owners. So take that time to be there. Just talk about what a sign and facade improvement program is, some of the things as we've talked today that would go into it, and just get their sense. And then during the evening, again, this would be completely open to the public, anybody who wanted to come, talk about, again, what a sign and facade program is, discuss the options. I'm kind of interested in talking with you about maybe testing some of those designs. I can show what they did in the RRP program, but also show a little bit of before and afters that people have done, but also, types of facade improvements, types of signage. If that's something that you think would be valuable to test, I could certainly add that to part of this. But I'm interested in what you think would be helpful to people sort of maybe learning about things like this for the first time.
I think the more visual examples you have, the easier it is for people to comprehend,
Okay.
because a lot of people may not have the ability to visualize what it could look like.
Mhm.
But if they can see something before and after, they go, oh, okay, I can see how this possibly could be a suggestion.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I
Could
agree
you-
completely on that one.
Could you also add sizes next to those? So when you show the size of the sign that the person put up, or the size of the logo on the awning.
Yeah.
Because I think that might help us understand approximately what the size might be. If
Or even visually just show it, Rebecca, like, oh, here's like one this big, and then this is this big, right?
Yeah, because I want to double check. Emily has a lot of experience with these sizes, and I want to double check some of the sizes against our sign bylaw,
Yeah.
and get your feel on what you actually love, and what kinds of things you want to see from her illustrations. And then if we want to make updates to the sign bylaw after that, that might be a good time to do it.
Do we remember, Christina and Ron and Paul, what community did we mirror that sign bylaw? So sign bylaw came out of economic development, Rebecca.
Okay, great.
So Do you remember what community that was?
Wasn't Andover, was it?
No, I want to say, was it somewhere on the Cape?
Mm,
No, was
I'd
it?
have to go back and look. I probably have some of that info. I can look it back. I can
It
look
was,
at
Bill Johnson was the chair at the time. He probably knows. We
Mhm.
could ask him, but yeah, because we could then grab some examples from that community. I'm sure they're
Yes.
available online.
Mhm.
That would be helpful to know if you can find out which town that
I can
was.
look that,
I'd be
I can
happy
look
to
that up,
look into it.
Rosemary,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I want to say, was it the Cape? I mean, I know we looked at some community on the Cape. Maybe we discounted it as being too stringent.
I'm not sure, but that was a long time ago, you know.
Oh, I know.
So visuals, obviously some information, the information that I gave you today about what's included in the program. And then maybe a heavy focus on the before and after, or what different, even if I can't get the
Mhm.
before for some pictures, I know I can get the after of some really good storefronts. It's one of those things that I collect whenever I go to a community and then end up with, 1,000 pictures of storefronts. So I've got
And
some
the other
great-
thing, Emily, too, I think would be just sort of the whole financial part of it, how
Yeah.
it works. Obviously, you'd be explaining that, but that may be causing some people some hesitancy,
Yeah.
thinking, I have to match this. How much am I on the hook for? I want to do it, but I don't know how it works. And
Yeah, even an example of, like, Emily had thrown out to Brian and Rebecca and I about, well, it's usually somewhere like $5,000 to do this, this, and this. So that would be a $2,500 match. That's great. That's a good frame of reference for them. Just so that you know, I did stop by at both of our downtown banks. And I'm writing an email to them, which will be forwarded to their corporate offices. Both of them said that they are invested in the community and would like to do something, but I have no idea how much they would like to do, as far as would it be 0% or how many years or capped at what amount. I did also call the chamber and I did not get callbacks yet.
Okay.
I don't think the timing will allow, but just a little bit concerned about setting up expectations that may not be able to be met depending on what program you all choose to implement. It's a different program if it's a grant versus a different program if it's a loan. It's a different program if it's a cost share. So I'm just wondering how that's presented at a public meeting when some of those decisions I don't think would be made at the time.
They're just simply presented as options that for consideration. So there's nothing, I would never go to a public meeting and say, we're definitely going to do this when that hasn't been decided. It would be, exactly as I said tonight, some towns do this, some towns do this, some towns do this. We're continuing to investigate, but, would like your input on what might be best here. So, and that usually is a good way of getting people to understand the implications of the, just exactly to your question earlier about, you can't give a grant and keep giving that saved money out, right? Because the grant's going to use it all up. So having people understand that if you do it as a loan, and what the terms of the loan are will also have an impact. If you have a payback over 4 years, you're going to be able to turn that money over a lot faster than if you have the deferred program that Brockton has, for example. So that's important for people to understand those implications.
And if it were just a partnership that we had with the bank, it would involve no funds, and we can't guarantee if they're going to qualify for the loan.
Right.
They have to go through that process at all. It's just really there as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Emily, at that evening presentation, is there discussion of the percentage of participants that you want to see? Or, I mean, typically in a town or a city, is that a factor?
You mean in terms of the number of people coming to the meeting?
Well, let's say, no, I'm just saying, like, if 10 people agree that they want to try to do this, we don't have that many businesses, but, can we get, is there a way to encourage them to, misery loves company, that they would like say, oh, we are doing it, then like everybody that's in the Zina block, for example, if they all agree that we want to try to do this together, or as a group. I don't know. Is there a pitch to that as well or not?
I think there could be. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to preclude a single business owner.
No,
if the
I
other people don't
understand.
want to do it, but
Yeah.
if we can use sort of the daytime meetings and the nighttime meeting to gauge the amount of interest in the program, it might it might be a consideration as to whether or not this should be a one-off or a recurring program, right? So
Right.
if for example you had enough money for 3 businesses and only 3 businesses were interested, well, it's a really easy decision, right? But
Right.
if you wanted to spread it out over more years because you had more that were interested but didn't have enough funding for a single year, then that might push us in a different direction in terms of thinking about the structure of the program.
I'm just thinking in terms of economic development, because obviously we're wanting to see upgrade of facades and signage.
Absolutely.
Where is the incentive for people to, I know it's a matching, I guess that's the hook or whatever we decide, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to incentivize people.
So I think there's probably a couple of things to think about. One would be if it's first come, first serve, right? So there is a, whether it's a real or an artificial limitation, we're only doing 3 this year. We're only doing 5 this year. So the first 5 that apply. So I think that would be part of it. And I think the other part that would go into it is if you are a multi-business building, you might get preference if all of the businesses in that building come together. So that's another one to think about.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you.
But we can build in those criteria or build in the incentives into the program to really get people to think. And then again, that goes back to the first movers, right?
Right.
So it might take an initial smaller round of funding to the most enthusiastic. And you can still do it with an application process to get the others to say, oh, wait, this is a good deal. These 3 businesses did it, and now my business looks shabby next to theirs.
Right.
So, that's
Well, and good news travels fast. Yes.
Exactly. So I think I will be working on the presentation for the public. I think just figuring out maybe through emails or whatever who would be good to talk to, and setting up the contacts between me and them so we can set up some meetings on the 14th. And I think that's sort of really what I had for you all tonight. And then the idea is that after the public meeting, sort of back to that schedule, I would draft the program at that point and come back to you all for some input on how that looks, whether or not it's the right materials, the right structure for going forward. So get input from you and then revise that draft, get input from the select board as well, revise the draft. But that's sort of where we stand at the moment. So I don't know if you have any other questions or ideas, but
this is just a logistical piece, but how much earlier than the meeting would you like to be visiting the business owners?
Let me check.
That's the 13th, Rosemary.
It's the
Is it?
13th. Yeah, I think I misspoke. The 14th, so that's today. Yeah. Let's see. I would say probably I've got a 10 o'clock meeting that morning and I'd come out. So maybe 1 o'clock.
Okay. So from 1 o'clock on, right now, I think we're looking at, what was it, 5:30 or 6:30? What time do you think we'd get most of or a larger participation from the business owners? 6:30?
6:30, right?
6:30?
Okay.
I don't know. If they're open till
The
5.
the property owners or the business or the landowner?
Business owners,
Either,
business.
either one.
What do you think, Steve?
I'd say after their work hours
Yeah.
for the business owners, and you could do a drop-in with the property, set it up so that a drop-in with the landowner. Then you could get them all the business owners together and have them in with a like, so you can make a presentation and they've got a same sort of mindset as you move forward with the idea.
Do most businesses close at 5?
No,
Okay.
there are businesses that are open later. See, you know,
Okay.
like the pizza places, you know, they're
Oh,
just
yeah, of
trying to
course,
get
of course,
coverage,
of course.
you know,
Yeah.
the restaurants. The property owners might not be available during the day because they might work elsewhere.
Right.
You might get a mixed bag on that one.
I could certainly do follow-ups via Zoom for people who aren't available in person. So,
Right.
I'm happy to do that.
I mean,
And
the struggle I see, because, you know, I walk in and talk to these businesses, Steve does as well, you
Yep.
know, when he was doing Celebrate Ashburnham, is that some of the individuals weren't born in the United States and they think that what they're doing now is just fine.
Mhm.
And but there's a number of them in town. And realistically, they're the people that really need the most help. It's like, for example, Sammy, who owns one of the pizza places. He has one of the largest parking lots downtown. And he said to me, I don't have any room for outdoor dining. And he never has more than maybe 5 cars parked in the entire lot.
He's the only guy that has a room. You could put it on the side of the building.
Correct, correct. You know, so it's like, how do you convince him that it's important to come to the meeting?
Right.
So he's somebody that, you know, maybe if we tried to get you to speak to him, then that would encourage him to come later on that night.
And I'm happy to do like the rounds of talking to the business. I can just stop by the business, give them a handout if they're free, chat with them. If not, say, hey, I'll be here this time tonight. Please come to the meeting.
Yes.
I'm happy to do it that way as well. So
Yeah, I mean, that will be the toughest part, because
Mhm.
and some of them are extremely successful businesses relative to others. So that's another reason they're like the nail salon. She's booming. She's probably sitting there going, I don't need to do anything. I'm not going to spend any money. I mean, they're lining up outside the door.
You hit it on the head, Rosemary.
Yep.
Mhm. But that's also a case where the property owner might be interested because it would
Correct.
increase the value of their buildings. So
Correct.
that's the other part to discuss with them. It's like two different groups, right? The property owner has one set of motivations, the business owner has another set of motivations. And so
Correct.
during the conversation, the end result is the improved signs, the improved facades, but the benefits are different for each. So.
Correct. Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. Well, great. I wish the market was up and running, but that went under. And well, we don't know if it's under. It's been closed all winter, but
Oh, no.
the grocery store, and that was a big, that was a draw downtown.
Yes.
What's going on, Christina, on that one?
I sent a letter to the person and it came back to me about 10 days later.
Who was the gal that we had on the Celebrate Ashburnham committee that her husband was gonna open the deli?
So he
portion?
lives next door, Irene.
Yeah, yeah.
Richard lives next door. Yeah, I mean, I
Are they
could talk.
year round or are they full-time year round residents?
Irene seems like she's not here in the winter.
Yeah, she's
right
in and
now,
out, but he's
but
around?
Richard's here. Richard's here.
Okay.
Yes, he is here. Yeah. So,
All right.
yeah, I could talk to him and see what's going on a little bit more, but
Sounds like you really
I
got
did
the
send
short
a
end of the
letter.
We should invite him anyway, because, you know, if he's interested in doing a business, maybe he just relocates.
That's true. That's true. No, I mean, I did send the letter, but like I said, it came back undeliverable. I'd sent it to the PO box in Ashburnham, so I need to figure out another address to try to send it, maybe to that Melrose address, or is that, no, Methuen, right? Rosemary, Methuen.
So on. All right. Well, anything else?
We're good.
Not on my end.
All
All
right.
right.
Oh, just to let you know, there's a set of resources you might find interesting from an economic development perspective about the impact of facade improvements on communities, on businesses. So I'll give you these links when I send this to you.
Well, that'd be
Yeah,
good.
that'd be great. I want to share the PowerPoint to Ron.
Mhm.
And I don't know, Rebecca, we'll talk about whether or not this is something we want to put on our town website.
That'd be good.
This right here, this meeting?
No, the link for
Present the
the,
Oh, the
PowerPoint
link. Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
just something announcing that this is happening with the date of the
Mhm.
public meeting, getting on people's calendar.
Oh, do you need flyers, social media posts? I usually do a flyer and then like a JPEG or a .png. that I
We'll
can
take anything you
post it to social. Okay.
Yes,
That's
yes,
perfect.
All right, great.
We
Send
can
it
put
out.
that on the website.
Excellent.
great.
I'll probably get that to you next week sometime.
Super. Thanks so much, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you.
awesome. Thank
Hey,
you.
well, thanks everybody for attending tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe. Happy shoveling.
Thank you, Ron. Ron's saying good night now.
Good
Okay.
night.
He's waving. He's waving, actually. There he is.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Good
See ya.
night.
Good
night.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Heather, you can stop recording.